Hello. In 1 Chronicles chapter 21, we see that David ordered a census to be done in Israel. The first verse itself says, like, Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel. So, this thing that he decided was not from God. He made that decision in his own mind with the with the inspiration that he got from Satan. That's what we read at the first verse itself, right here. So he ordered the census, and his commander in chief, Joab, he did the census from Beersheba to Dan. That's what we see in First Chronicles chapter 21. He himself asked David, why, Lord, you need to do this? Why do you need to bring up the anger of the Lord on Israel? But, David was the king, and he had to do, the commander in chief, Joab, had to do the commandment of the king. So he did the census. And we see that this was very much displeasing to God, and he struck Israel with a pestilence, maybe like a pandemic or something like a disease. And we see that several people in Israel, they died as a result of this pestilence. But at this point of time, we see that God talked to Dan to talk to David about this, right? So he gave three options as punishments, right? The first one is either 3 years of famine, or 3 years being given into the hands of the enemies, or another thing is the pestilence, right? 3 days of pestilence, right? So that can be a greater disaster. Any of those three can be a greater disaster. But we see that pestilence affected, and almost 70,000 men died. Why was it displeasing to God? Mainly because David was doing this without asking God's approval, and also he did this just to show the strength of Israel, just to show how strong they are as a country, as a nation. And then we see that several people died in Israel, and we see that David is praying to the Lord, and also to relax his hand. And then we see that the angel of the Lord standing between the earth and the heaven. That's a sight that David had seen when he lifted up his head and looked up. He had seen the angel of the Lord standing between the earth and the heaven. And we see that the angel of the Lord had a sword drawn towards Jerusalem, and we know what's going to happen, right? So it is a great destruction that is there in front of them. But there is one thing that God wants David to do at this point of time. We see that David is asking, Lord, this sin has been done by me, not by my people of the country, of the nation. But he's asking God, do it on me and my household, not on my people. But angel of the Lord commanded God to talk to David about this. And at this point of time, we see that Ornan is a name of a person. He was a Jebusite. We see that Ornan was threshing the wheat in his house. And then he also saw the angel of the Lord, but he was keep threshing the wheat. And then we see, so God ordered David to build an altar for him in the sight of this Jebusite Ornan. So David himself went to the house of Ornan to ask him to give him the site to build this altar for the Lord. And he was willing to give it. And he said, like, it's not just the lot, he will also give everything that he needed, like threshing sledges, burnt offerings, and wood and wheat, all that. I'll give you everything that you needed. But David says, like, no, I don't need anything for free. I'm not here. I'm here not to take all your stuff from you without paying you, but I'll pay you the full price to you. And we see that David gave 600 shekels of gold to Ornan to get his property, to build the altar of the Lord. And then David set up the altar, and we see that a fire from heaven came down as it was pleasing to the Lord. And and then we see that right after that, the angel of the Lord put his sword back into the sheath. Right, he put the sword back into the sheath. And then we see that God was pleased in the offering given by, and just by seeing the sword of the angel of the Lord, he was so scared. David was so scared even to go near to him and ask him a question. Right. So just by reading the chapter, one thing that you see is David was a person who always used to ask God about his willingness, or whether it is pleasing to him. He inquired God. Several occasions we read that, but this time we don't see David went to the Lord asking for his will in this matter. And he was doing this trusting in his intellect, trusting in the power of the nation, the power of the people in his nation. And he was completely, withheld, or did not ask for the approval of the Lord to do this matter. Even though his commander-in-chief Joab, he came to know that this will be displeasing to God, but David did not realize that. At this point of time, David invited the anger of the Lord, and you see a greater destruction happening in his nation. So whatever that we do, it is always important to ask the will of God. Any step that we take, any new thing that we do, before that, sit at the presence of the Lord and ask His guidance, His counseling, before we undertake anything. Otherwise, if we trust in our own intellect, if we trust in our own will and do things, that can often be a greater disaster later on. May God bless you all. Amen.